People who have been bitten by uncommon animals. What bit you? How badly did it hurt? Giant Hawaiian centipede got me with its jaws on my big toe, which was not covered. It hurt for 2 days. Like getting pinched in a vice or something. I've also been stung by a small Portuguese man-of-war in Hawaii. Wrapped around my torso and shoulder. I threw it off and ran up the beach with my shoulder like cold stinging fire and passed out. It never occurred to me that Hawaii would be full of nightmarish things to bite me. Ooh, I was stung by a PMOW jellyfish once. It wrapped itself around my right leg. I thought it was seaweed at first and used my left leg to try to get it off of me. It was so painful. The lifeguard had vinegar and salt, I think, and rubbed me down to help with the stinging. I was like 15 and he was super hot. So that was cool but also embarrassing because my parents were watching. I was bitten by a hedgehog that my dog dug out of hibernation during winter one year. I was following the instructions of a wildlife expert that I called when I found the hedgehog and giving it an oil bath to help with its dry skin, and it was sniffing my hand and suddenly jumped it. Me and dug its tiny needle teeth into my palm. The bite itself hurt a fair bit, but what was worse that it didn't want to let go. Had to go into the hospital later to get some shots to make sure I didn't catch anything. But that hedgehog was an angel, and I ended up realizing it after the winter. Hope the little buddy is doing good. As a fun comparison, it hurt a hell of a lot less than when I got bitten by a guinea pig. This is the first thing I thought of. When I was younger, I had a pet hedgehog who was a mean little fucker. They have sharp teeth. Bite hard, twist, tug and don't let go. Worst pet I ever had. I've been bit by several uncommon animals, including 1. Macaw. This one hurt the most on impact and left a chunk of flesh missing. Plus a giant bird with flapping wings and an attacking mouth is pretty discombobulating. 2. African gray parrot, similar to the macaw, but it was a once-off. There were about 5 African greys living together in an enclosure. One of them was friendly and would come to a particular corner for head scratches. A mean one would pretend to be the nice one and lure people in for the scratches and then just bite their hands. He got me once. 3. Wild dog pup, about 3 weeks old. Happened during feeding, though it was clear the pup was not after food. Even at that age, it left a full-jawed, perfectly circular, even teeth print on my arm for 2 weeks. 4. A 1-year-old lion. In a jealous fit over a male, she attacked me. No deep wounds but lots of tears and scratches. 5. Unknown spider. Turned into a welt and wound the size of a tennis ball and had to get a 3-inch hole cut out of the back of my leg to fight the infection. That unknown spider bite sounds like a brown recluse bite. I lanced one of those for a friend once. Greenish liquid poured out with the worst smell ever and left a crater. All lion cub. I would have thought so too. But it was in South Africa. When I asked the doctor what kind he thought it was, he kinda shrugged and was like, "Aish, it's South Africa." My gerbil bit me on the finger when I was like 10. That part probably isn't that uncommon. And it hurt for a minute, mostly because he broke through a fingernail. However, at the time I was on heart medicine for an arrhythmia. The gerbil started seizing an hour or so later and died like 2 minutes after that. I definitely unintentionally poisoned him with my medicated blood that he ingested. Are you a poison dart frog? I was a zookeeper and got bit on the hand by a ring-tailed lemur. He sliced the tip of my finger open almost to the bone. It didn't hurt at first, but when I was told to flush it with running water, it kept flapping open and the pain was excruciating. Throbbing, horrible pain. It was bleeding so much I asked if I should keep flushing or stop the bleeding, and they agreed. Stopping the bleeding was more important. A colleague drove me to an urgent care center and had to fill out my forms for me because I couldn't write. After I was taken into a room, a nurse placed my hand in an iodine bath, where it started to feel better. About 15 to 20 minutes later they took the bowl and said the doctor would be in soon. Now that it was exposed to air again, the pain came back with a vengeance. Never before have I been in so much pain that endorphins kicked in and I became a comedian. The doctor still hadn't arrived after 20 minutes of torment, and I started making jokes that they had forgotten about me because they were googling what a lemur was. Turns out I was right. Seriously. WTF. Lol. And when they finally arrived they told me that the person who had taken my paperwork didn't know what a lemur was, so they said I'd been bit by a lemon. They also asked if the lemur had been rabid, because rabid feral lemurs are totally a thing where I live. LMAO. In the end I got 3 stitches, which I probably shouldn't have gotten considering it was an animal bite. And it took 6 months for the feeling to return to my fingertip. And that's the story of how I got bitten by a rabid lemon. You know, I was gonna try to grow tomatoes, but I think rabid lemons are a better bet. Praying mantis. I bred those and it was feeding time. It mistook my finger for a mealworm somehow. She caught it, and I thought she would let go after realizing the mistake. No, she did not. She started biting my finger. Thinking she would notice it tastes nothing like a mealworm, she would let go. No, she did not. So I let her bite until it started hurting and forcefully pulled back my hand. She was unharmed, just shocked from surprise, and saw a little hole in my finger about the size of a pinhead. Never happened before or after. Just this one time. This is somehow kind of cute. Yeah, it did feel cute. Getting bitten by an animal you raised from when it was just out of the egg. Look, Dad, I got big and strong. Then I felt it was getting through my skin, and cute felt like a long time ago. When I was around 12 years old living on Long Island, NY, we were always told that killing a praying mantis was a federal offense. So I was always careful whenever I saw one. One day I came home from school and on my screen door was this huge green praying mantis. So like an idiot I tried coaxing it into my left hand with my right hand so I can safely place it in the bushes on the side of the house. When it leapt onto my palm and simultaneously used its front legs and mandibles to very painfully bite my index finger. I was so afraid of hurting it because federal offense that instead of just grabbing it with my right hand and pulling it off, I just swung my arm around while running in circles in my front yard like an idiot. It only agitated the mantis more and gripped harder than anything I've ever experienced. It was like my hand was in a vice and it was biting through my flesh. It finally let go and actually flew somewhat to the ground. I ran in the house and I had a huge hole on the top of my finger and like 6 little holes where its 4 legs gripped my hand. Was not expecting that level of force from such a little organisme, monsieur. I mean small in relation to my cat or an opossum, monsieur. When I was about 12 I went to this drive-through safari with my family. My grandma gave me some crackers to crush up in my hand and let an ostrich, emu. I'm not too sure how to tell the difference. Eat it out of my palm, monsieur. It went straight for my thumb and I remember it not hurting too much. But it scared me to the point of tears and dropping cracker pieces everywhere. Similar story. A few years ago, my family was on a safari in Africa, and my cousin, Mufasa, was trampled to death by a pack of wildebeests. And we all took it really hard. All of us. Kind of in the audience of what happened. That sounds like this time I was trying to throw a party. And everyone was over for the weekend. And then my Uncle Bernie died. And so me and my best friend had to pretend like he was still alive. That sounds awful, man. Did his son at least avenge his death after a long harrowing journey of self-discovery? It would probably take like an hour and a half to tell that story. Do farm animals count? Guinea hen. Yes, it hurts like a small pinch, small bruises are left. Goose, bloody hell, those bastards cause damage. Cow? Yes, they will, especially as older calves try to take a finger thinking it is a treat being fed, not as painful as a goose. but deserves noting, especially if they get that part that's at the base of the nail bed. Parrots, this is a blood drawing and very painful bite, possible scars. Rabbit, skin taken off. Blood, scars, emotional damage. Runaway is the correct terminology used. Lizard, not the smaller anoles as they don't do much, but the larger iguana after a good tail slap does draw blood. The assassin bug feels like a wasp sting. Fire ants truly have come from hell and spread that joy. Tern, water sea bird. These buggers dive bomb hit, so not sure if a bite, but tagging chicks requires headgear. Snake, yes, they do draw blood. It sucks and I would much rather handle the little wriggly garden snakes. Love the emotional damage for rabbit bites. They're just too innocent and cute to bite like they do. Giraffe. When I was a toddler, my maternal grandmother had one of her moments of inspiration while we were at the zoo. She perched me on top of the outside fence to the giraffe enclosure, knowing full well that I was scared of heights, and backed up a good distance, while yelling at me to stop crying and feed the giraffe my pryaniki while she took pictures so she could show all her old lady frenemies how much of a good grandma she is, and how nobody appreciates her enough. The giraffe came to investigate what all the crying and shouting was about, stole my whole bag of pryaniki, licked me, and started chewing a chunk of my hair, which is pretty mild behavior for a giraffe all things considered. Being a toddler, I went from blind terror to full-blown hysteria at the thought of being eaten by a fucking giraffe, and fell backwards off the fence. The giraffe got to keep the chunk of hair in my pryaniki. I got scrapes, bruises, and a bloody bit of scalp where the hair never grew back in properly. My maternal grandmother got to throw a pity party about how her ungrateful daughter was ungrateful enough to ruin the expensive roll of film she bought in Czechoslovakia for her expensive camera that she also bought in Czechoslovakia. Her indignation about the incident would outlive both Czechoslovakia and, presumably, the giraffe, and presumably was never allowed to see you again, because yikes, I got bit by a horse once when I was 5 or 6. My older sisters were friends with a neighbor girl whose family owned a horse, and one of their favorite things to do with her was to go pet the horse. One day I was over there with them and we all went to pet the horse, and my sister's friend suggested that I feed the horse some hay from my hand, which I did. At this point my sister told me that it was very important that I keep my hand flat while feeding the horse and not poke my finger into its mouth. Why she said this I have no idea, as it never in a million years would have otherwise occurred to me to poke my finger into a horse's mouth. But once she said that, I pretty much immediately poked my finger into the horse's mouth to see what would happen. What happens when a person pokes their finger into a horse's mouth while it's eating is that the horse continues to eat, not caring a whit for the hard bony bit that has found its way into the hay. I immediately began to wail as 3 preteen girls struggled to pry a horse's mouth open to free my finger. After a seeming eternity, the horse lost interest in the bony bit of hay and spat my finger out, still attached and generally none the worse for wear. And I learned an important lesson to never let my sister's bizarre warnings inspire me to do otherwise unthinkable things. You sound like my son. Don't do the thing. He does the thing. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.